It's about that time. We put down our very first Master's Guide to Dragonite. We hit level 9. We globally go wherever we please with our Unite move. We can go ahead and steal objectives. We can Hyper Beam anybody and delete them. We can punch them with Outrage. We can 1v1 anyone in the game, almost. And we can have a good time doing it. Here's Dragonite, brand new Master's Guide. Smash that like button, join the Discord, come tell me I suck, come say hi, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, and see you guys in the next video. Hey guys, welcome back. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all those around the world. Today is our very first Master's Guide for Dragonite. I'm here for it. Hope you guys are here for it. I'm very excited for this Pokemon. I'm super hyped for him. This has been the most hype I have been for a brand new Pokemon in Pokemon Unite in a very long time. And this guide is going to probably change the way you play Dragonite. These are only my thoughts, my opinions from a solo queue environment. So you can take whatever I say with a grain of salt. If you already know this stuff, you can get right to the gameplay. But let's get into it, because I'm going to teach you something you don't know today when it comes to Dragonite. Now, Dragonite has two passive abilities. Two of them, okay? You have one for Dratini and Dragoneer, then you have one specifically for Dragonite. So for Dratini and Dragoneer, you have Marvel Scale, okay? What that does is you take less damage if you're inflicted by a status condition. Why do you take less damage? Because you get a base flat 100 extra defense when you take a status on either of those two Pokemon. Now for Dragonite, you have multi-scale. And what happens is when you're damaged by another player, not wild Pokemon, another player, okay? You gain a buff that reduces damage taken by 20% for about 2.5 seconds, alright? Now, this ability has a what? It's got a cooldown, obviously, otherwise it'd be pretty broken, right? It's got a cooldown, and this ability's cooldown is only 15 seconds. Okay, it doesn't state this here, but it's 15 seconds, and it's 20%, okay? Now, his basic attacks for Dragonite is probably right now, hands down, one of the most unique in the game, because every single stage of evolution is different. Dratini, she will heal on her third auto attack, boosted auto attack. She will heal, okay? Now she has to land the ability to deal damage to heal, by the way. Now Dragoneer has the same exact ability as Dratini does, except for she also gains another ability. She can shoot electricity. So thunder or electric, whatever you want to call it. When she lands that ability on a target, they get stunned. So she has two. So she heals for one, or she can stun for another. They rotate, okay? With your boosted auto attacks. Now Dragonite, what happens to him? He gets a third one. So he gets both of those on top of another one. But with his, it's a little different. Now, with Dragonite, what happens to him is he gets fire. And every use of that boosted auto attack can change. So it's water, electric. But if the fire attack hits, it deals additional damage to about 10% of the enemy's remaining HP. So the lower the HP of the opponent that you're attacking, the more damage you would deal with fire when you have Dragonite. That's pretty good, right? Also, his basic auto attacks lower his cooldown of all his abilities by about 1 second when you land them, okay? Now, there is something here I'm going to show you that you probably don't know. So you can take my word for it, or you take it with a grain of salt, each their own. Now, Extreme Speed, not a lot of people run this ability. It's pretty much the same thing as Charizard Flare Blitz, except for when you rush to a target, you knock back, or kind of like push other Pokemon out of the way just a little bit. But this ability also can reset Multi-Scale's cooldown. Multi-Scale is Dragonite's passive, so it can reset it once you land this ability. Sounds great, doesn't it? Because you get up in the melee range with Outrage, you beat up the Pokemon. You lower your ability's cooldown by 1 second every time you damage something. You just constantly, rinse and repeat with Extreme Speed and Outrage. Your passive ability sounds great, but a lot of Pokemon can kite you out, so you gotta be careful with that. Now, bread and butter for a lot of people is Dragon Dance, even if you're running Outrage. So you can playtest them if you like. I personally enjoy Dragon Dance, but we'll get into it. There's a lot of stuff here that it does not tell you what this ability actually does. What you see here is what it does, but it doesn't tell you the damage, how much damage it increases to, or what have you. Now, this ability gives you 3 charges, so 3 stacks, right? They increase your attack by 8% per stack, so a cap up to 24%. Now, that also increases the damage on Hyper Beam. So depending on how many stacks of Dragon Dance you have up, the more damage your Hyper Beam will do, right? Makes sense. Now, at the same time, all these stacks will be removed once you activate Hyper Beam. And every basic attack that you do in between whatever will lower the cooldown on all your abilities, so you can spam Dragon Dance more, if that makes sense. If you don't use Hyper Beam or your stacks fall off, it's because you're not using Dragon Dance, you're not keeping Dragon Dance up. So as long as you are Dragon Dancing, you will have a stack on you. So keep that in mind. When you level this ability up to the next stage, it just increases the movement speed if there are enemies nearby when Dragon Dance ends. You know, kind of neat. Either way, Hyper Beam is where a lot of people actually really enjoy. Hyper Beam, Outrage. Outrage is kind of simple. It's kind of simplistic, but there's a trick to it. Because, as you can see here, it says that user is necessarily stunned once this ability goes off, right? So what happens is you activate Outrage, it'll stun everyone around you, and then you just beat them down, right? Now, every one of your auto attacks becomes a boosted auto, but they also become melee instead of ranged. Which sounds really good, because it does a lot of damage and it does crit. Makes sense. But you gain a buff for 5 seconds, increases your basic attack speed, and converts all of the attacks to melee boosted attacks. And it alternates between water, electric, and fire. So again, if it's a fire punch, what happens? You do 10% more damage on top of that opponent's HP. So the lower their HP, the more damage you deal, and if you crit, it's actually really nice. But after the ability ends, you get stunned. But the more damage you deal, the more attacks you land, the lower your cooldowns go on all your abilities. Therefore, you can just spam Outrage again. Without getting stunned, mind you. Sounds pretty good. But we're going to dive into this game. We're going to have a good time. I'll see you guys in a minute. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to those around the world. Welcome back to our very first Master's Guide for Dragonite. Hopefully you guys are excited. I'm super excited. We're coming at you in a Master's game through the jungle, running all different kinds of different build items. I do change my build depending on what I'm playing or depending on what I'm feeling. I've been doing theory crafts pretty much all the time with Dragonite. And I finally settled on the build of choice here. Today, we're doing Focus Band, we're doing Muscle Band, and Weakness Policy. I'm not running Scope Lens, I'm not running Razor Claw, I'm not saying they're bad. I, personally, just don't need them. Now, you might enjoy those items more than me. It's all the playstyle preference, you know? I don't need them because I'd rather have something else that's more defensive, it's more, keeps me alive longer in a team fight, or I don't have to rely on that so much, you know what I mean? Now, Dragonite does have a base crit percent. You know, every time he levels up, what have you, after level 5, he does have base crit, which I don't necessarily need the Scope Lens, you know what I mean? You will always crit, even though Dratini, Dragonair, they crit as well with their auto attacks, what have you. You don't need Scope Lens to crit. Now, you do more damage with Scope Lens because it increases your crit damage, but you don't necessarily need it, so you can opt that out if you choose to. If you don't want to run a Focus Band, you can take more damage items. If you don't want to run a Weakness Policy, you can take more damage items. It's up to you. Now, Weakness Policy is very good with Dragonite. It's very good with other Pokemon. It's very good with Zeraora. It's very good with Lucario, Snorlax. But the reason why I enjoy this item on Dragonite is because of their passive abilities. So you have two different ones, which I went over a minute ago for those of you that didn't watch that part. Your passive abilities with your Dratini and Dragonair are different than Dragonite. But we're talking about Dragonite here. Dragonite gets an ability called Multi-Scale, which lowers the damage that he takes by 20% for about 2.5 seconds. Okay? So you keep that in mind. You have that going for you on top of Weakness Policy, which just stacks and stacks and stacks your damage, which is pretty nuts. You got 4 stacks of Weakness Policy out. You have 3 stacks of Dragon Dance that are out there. You Hyper Beam somebody. You essentially can one-shot most squishy targets, legit, or half any Pokemon essentially in the game with Hyper Beam. It does so much damage as long as you play it right. Now, Dragonite has a lot of weaknesses, just like other Pokemon do. He can be kited out if you're running extreme speed. He can be kited out if you're running Dragon Dance and Outrage, because you have to be in melee range to beat somebody down. If you can't touch them, you don't lower your cooldown on Dragon Dance. You know, there's a lot of ins and outs with this Pokemon. He's not just stomp your face. He takes skill to play, trust me. He's not like certain other Pokemon, like Zeraora, for example, where you hit Wall Charge and you can delete a Pokemon without counterplay. He's not like that. Now, you can mess up. You can Dragon Dance into a wall if you're not careful. You can Dragon Dance the wrong way if you're not careful. There's a lot of things you gotta pay attention to with this Pokemon, but at the same time, You see how I have 2 stacks up, or had 2 stacks up for that fight? Or for the Dreadnought fight there? The more stacks of Dragon Dance that you have up, the more damage your Hyper Beam will do. 1700 damage, I only had 2 stacks up there, but I was also at stacks of weakness policy. Now keep in mind, I am bullying this bot lane. Alright? I pick the lane, I do this every single game I play, no matter what my jungler is. If my team composition, for example, is better in a top lane or a bot lane, for example, I will camp that lane. Why? Because we have the better picks in that lane. Our lane should win. If I can apply pressure to that lane and make it even worse for the enemy team, I'm gonna do that. I mean, that's just, why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? So you kind of gotta pick and choose what lane you're gonna gank at level 5 for bees. You gotta pick your spot every single time. Sometimes I like to wait and see where the enemy jungler is and then go in the opposite lane, or go into the same exact lane that jungler is in, because they don't expect you to be there if you're not there already. Whereas this Greninja here is going to get hit by a Hyper Beam with 3 stacks. With 3 stacks of Dragon Dance, 2 stacks of Dragon Dance, and we delete him. I have 4 stacks of weakness policy coming up, 2 stacks of Dragon Dance here. Hyper Beam Venusaur, it does so much damage, let alone Venusaur is super bulky, right? Does a lot of damage for whatever item build you run on that Pokemon. Does ridiculous amount of damage, and you can just take him down. Now in a 1v1 situation, Venusaur versus Dragonite, sometimes you will lose that fight. Alright, if Venusaur has his Unite move up, you will lose that fight 9 out of 10. There are some fights with Dragonite you cannot take in a 1v1. A very good TSAREEN player will 100 you every single time. I don't care what you say about, oh, I'm super good at Dragonite, she never beats me. TSAREEN, I think, probably has the potential of being the best 1v1 Pokemon in the game right now. Opposed of, we're not talking to have a red and blue buff, we're not talking about any of that stuff, just a straight up 1-on-1. She does a lot of damage, and we all know that. It probably needs to be tuned down a little bit, but hey, Dragonite is still here in team fights. He's still able to Hyper Beam the whole team. Now when it comes to doing these objectives, I hit Dreadnought for about 2400 damage with Hyper Beam because I had 3 stacks of Dragon Dance up. You want to always save those stacks for these objectives, because you never know if the enemy Dragonite's going to Unite move down here on top of you. You don't know if Greninja's going to try to steal it, or Cinderace's going to try to steal it. Make sure you have 3 stacks up on Dragon Dance and try to finish it off with Hyper Beam. Alright? Because that way you can secure that objective. Now, 9 out of 10, it may not happen every time, because not every game is perfect. We're only human. I make mistakes just as much as you do, so keep that in mind. I'm doing something right now in which I probably shouldn't. I'm pushing my power at this moment. I'm level 13. I'm kind of testing my limit, if that makes sense. Right here, I shouldn't be here in the situation that I'm in right now. I probably should go back to base. Why? Because I'm not farming. I'm not getting anything out of this. Yes, I'm getting kills. I get you.
You're on fire!
But I could be back there farming, leveling up some more instead of sitting here trying to push this goal when I only have a Eldegoss and a Pikachu to back me up right now. Now I'm in a bad spot. She has to ult to keep me alive. I have to back up here. Pikachu has a Unite move. He tosses it out. We do great. The enemy team, what happens? We kite them out. They run into us. We kill them. And they stay up in this top lane for no reason. Obviously, I'm going back. You know what I mean? It's just safer to do that. I go back here to farm. That's what I want to be at. Objectives are coming up. If I get killed there, I give them the experience for my shutdown, essentially. And I miss out on what? Farming, because I'm dead. There's a lot of things that people do in every single game, regardless of what Pokemon you're playing. It's called tunneling, for example. And think about this. Every single Greedent player that you guys see on the enemy team, what happens? Your teammates chase Greedent all over the map. And then they end up getting killed, or Greedent wastes their time like he's supposed to. Objectives come up and you miss those objectives because you're dead now, or you were chasing Greedent too long. There's a lot of things that you're not supposed to do that I catch myself doing. You catch yourself doing, even as Dragonite, because you think you have the best movement in the game, which you do, and you think you can catch every Pokemon, which 9 out of 10 you can. Besides, the question is, should you be doing it? Now, in the situation here, we're all on Articuno. I'm coming down here, so I'm thinking Cinderace is going to pop over the wall and Unite move. He doesn't. So I mess up. That was my bad. We could have had this Articuno. But if I was there, we'd have secured it, give or take. But at the same time, the enemy, they just activated their Unite move. They stole it. It is what it is. I was kind of predicting that Cinderace was going to do it. And sometimes when you think like that, you can cost your team games, even though you thought the right thing. You know, Cinderace might come around the corner and try a Unite move. Sure. I was trying to pace myself and counterplay it, but he didn't do that. And then we ended up losing there to Kuno. It's like little mistakes, little micro mistakes like this can cost you games sometimes, even though we're ahead. Now, considering we are ahead, I'm not worried about it. Hence why I didn't hit the surrender vote and surrender this game, because we were going to win this one because we're so far ahead. What is the damage that Dragonite can do with the carry potential this Pokemon has in the right hands? And don't get me wrong, I like to think I'm pretty good at Dragonite, but there's always someone out there who's better than you at something, because no one's best at everything, you know what I mean? Now, at the end of the day, there are Dragonite mains out there. I'd like to know your thoughts and opinions on the Pokemon. I think this Pokemon is going to be S tier for a lot of reasons. And it should be a no-brainer, let's be fair. This Pokemon does it all. It has mobility, it has damage, it has kill potential at level 5 when it comes out of the gate for bees. It has everything. You know what I mean? I just think this Pokemon right now is very, very good for what he does. And a lot of people, when the game first started, when he first came out, everybody was putting videos about Outrage. Right? I enjoy Outrage too. I really like Hyper Beam. I think Hyper Beam is the way to go when it comes to this Pokemon, because you can play safe, you can play aggressive, you can back off, you can kite, you can do everything. But hopefully you guys have learned something from Dragonite, learned something from what I'm telling you or showing you. But this has been Pawseplays. Please smash that like button, come join this Discord, come say hi, tell me I suck. I'll catch you guys in the next video. I'm gonna head out. Enjoy your day. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year's to you guys. Stay safe out there.